Welcome to another episode of the Startup Operator. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Kushal Bhagia. Kushal is the CEO of First Cheque, which, as the name suggests, invests in very early stage companies. Before this, he headed strategic alliances at UpGrad, one of the fastest growing edtech startups in the country. In this episode, we discussed his transition from founder to operator to investor, his learnings from meeting early stage startups across the country, and what founders can learn to build a successful company. So, Kushal, great to have you on the podcast finally. How are you?
I'm good, Roshan. Thank you so much for having me here. My pleasure.
So, all right. As I cued this in the intro, right? I'm gonna begin with that. You've done all three roles. You were a founder with Naya Disha, then an operator at UpGrad, and now you're an investor at First Cheque. Uh, What do you see as the main differences, and what are the similarities between all of these three hats that you worn?
So I feel like the founder and the investor mindset is very diametrically opposite. Founders are very problem driven, market driven, and they basically see a situation and they realize that the chances of them actually solving that problem or actually building a large company are minuscule.
Mhm.
But they always feel that I am going to be that 1% who actually goes through.
Right.
Whereas for the investor, it's always weighing the risks. As you know, what are the chances of this guy being that 1%? Was, as you know, most startups fail, right? So as an investor, your job is to basically, of course, as a VC investor, you have to be optimistic as well. Otherwise, you'll never have a big bang winner. But the mindset is always to sort of keep thinking of risks in the journey. Whereas in a startup, you know that okay, I understand the risks, but I'm the guy who's going to solve those risks. So they're diametrically opposite, I think, roles. As an investor, also your fulfillment in terms of getting to do things is much lesser, because you meet people, you study a lot of things, you read a lot, you take a call and you invest in a company, and after that what happens to that company is largely driven by the founders. The role you can play with your advice or your help, it's good to have, but honestly speaking, even if you were not there in the room, the founder would probably still do the same thing. The good founders end up doing the great founders end up building great companies anyways, with or without investors. So as an investor, um, you don't get to have the satisfaction of creation essentially. But as a founder, you can actually build things, see people using them, and that has its own joy. Of course, but risks are also different. As a founder, you're not sure you're going to get a monthly salary in the bank. But if you're an investor, you have raised a fund, so at least your base expenses are covered. And you don't have to worry about that. And there is significant upside for you in terms of how well your companies do, and then you get a carry from that. But as a founder, of course, if it does well, then you make a lot more money. If the company does well, then your investors. So yeah, that's I think broadly how I look at the two roles. Founders very hands-on, very operations driven. Investors are much more aloof, and I sort of miss the joy of creation in what I'm doing now.
Okay. Uh, Founders have to be a little more optimistic, right? I mean, not to the point of irrational exuberance per se, but at least they have to be optimistic about, as you rightly pointed out, them being the chosen ones to solve this particular problem as such. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I got the idea of this concept from Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. In that, he very clearly says that there are times when you wake up in the middle of the night, you feel like you've been chewing glass all day, and there's a chapter in that book called The Struggle. That chapter for me really sort of captures the journey of being a founder. It is just painful. Like every day, shit goes wrong, and you are the one who has to fix it. Uh, so yeah, I mean, founders' journeys are definitely very tough.
Right. So let's focus on this other facet of your life, which is like the whole operator phase that you went through with UpGrad, right? It's kind of a fantastic time for edtech startups right now. And I personally feel I think colleges may have to sell students on why they have to go back to colleges, right?
Yes.
Whenever this lockdown eases and we go back to what looks like the normal day-to-day things, right? You joined UpGrad in 2016. I think this was before Ronnie Screwvala invested in the company as well.
No, so Ronnie is essentially a co-founder of UpGrad.
Right.
Ronnie and Mayank started the company together.
Oh, okay.
So Ronnie's been there since day one. I joined when they had just launched the first program, which is the entrepreneurship program.
Right.
And I think about a couple of months after I joined, a slew of the first set of programs came out: data analytics, product management, digital marketing,
Right.
and so on.
Right.
So it was definitely a very, very interesting journey because I got to see a lot of things. I had never seen a company acquire customers at that scale before.
Yeah.
At my own startup, we never really broke out of a small angel funded setup. But here there was the company had large money. So like for a lot of the problems we would face, money not having money in the bank was not a problem. Like we could we had money in the bank because Ronnie was a co-founder and he had funded the company. So a lot of the problems that we could solve with money we were able to solve. So scale was coming fairly fast, and UpGrad did scale fairly quickly, partly because of that.
Right.
So yeah, it was very, very interesting. I got to see how a company, when I joined, I think there were about 50 odd people in the team, and when I left in 2000 end of 2017, there were almost 400 people in the team.
Wow.
So it grew really fast. Some of the programs did really, really well. There was instant product market fit in some verticals. Some took a little longer to come around. But the interesting thing about UpGrad and in any sort of edtech program-driven company, right, is that in normal companies you have to find PMF once. So if you're Uber, you figure out that okay, you have an app where you press a button and the cab
Very
comes. You
interesting.
launch it, you see people using, and you figure it out, and after that you scale. In a edtech company with these verticals, you have to find PMF every single time for every program.
Yeah.
So each program runs as a new vertical. Each of those programs will have its own channels, its own sort of communication, a different TG, a different CAC, a different LTV. So UpGrad had a very good structure to handle this kind of complexity. So they had a sort of a program director for every program that would sort of handle for that. So within UpGrad, there were basically 4 different divisions for each of the programs.
Kind of like a category manager in Amazon or something of that sort.
Yeah, something like that. Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So yeah, definitely very interesting experience. My role was to sell this to corporates to get their buy-in in terms of 3-4 things. One was getting them to co-create content with us. So convincing Uber to come and do case studies with us on our programs, convincing Genpact to come and do that, so on. Two was to basically get our students hired by these companies. So UpGrad had a variety of people who take its programs, from people who are just graduating college to people with 20 years experience also. But on average, I think the people, at least when I was there, was the people with 5, 6, 7 years of experience, mid-career professionals who now wanted to switch into something else, or who wanted to do better at what they were currently doing.
Right.
And my role was to part 2 of my role was to get companies to hire students who did our program. So that was quite cool, because companies had a very set hiring process where they would look at college degrees and work experience, and then hire candidates to sort of fill roles accordingly depending on the credentials people had. So we had to get them to understand that an online program counts for as much, or maybe counts for more than a traditional college education degree that somebody might have.
Right.
So that was pretty cool. Then part 3 was getting these companies to buy our programs. So there I think we were moderately successful when I was there, because our programs were really largely B2C focused, not B2B focused. B2B is something which was launched later on at UpGrad. And then part 4 was what I did shortly, which is sort of create custom programs for companies. So for example, we did a program with a large pharmaceutical company to train their sales reps when they join the company. So before joining the company, they would give them a mobile training program, and they had to finish it and then join the company.
Right.
So that saved them a lot of costs. So these broadly all kinds of corporate engagement is sort of what I looked at UpGrad.
Right. Interesting. And you mentioned you grew from 50 to 400, right? So what changes when you grow at such a rapid pace? I mean, from 50 to 400.
A lot of things change, a lot of things break. A lot of the processes you set for a team of 50 just don't work at a scale of 400. Communication changes a lot. So there is a lot of shared knowledge in the team when it's a small team. People just know things because they've all been in the same room and they know what was discussed, right? So you don't have to explicitly tell people what to do in a lot of situations. But in the larger team, decisions are taken at one level and they're executed at another level. So the guys who are executing don't know what were discussed in the room. So the kind of communication you need to do and that kind of a setup is very, very different. Hiring, if you hire very, very fast, then very often you end up hiring a little, some wrong people. So you have to be ready to to make mistakes there, because if you grow from 50 to 400, you will 100% hire some people who are not a fit with the company, or who don't exactly have the skill set that you thought they do.
Right.
So yeah, then
And that's when,
I mean,
sorry, and that's when culture becomes a really important part, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So, because the first set of people work directly with the founders, so they imbibe a lot of their values and their culture directly from them. So, as a founder of the company, at least till the first 10, 20 employees, like they're thinking about the company the same way that you are. But the moment you go beyond that, you have 400 employees. A lot of them may not even have met a founder in their time at the company, right? So, their idea of what the company does, what it stands for, what its values are what they get from their immediate bosses, right? So it sort of gets filtered down. So yes, culture also definitely gets impacted with scale a lot.
Yeah, yeah, because I think one of the main importance of culture, right, is when you make trade-offs.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we all agree on such lofty goals, right? Like, take any of those corporate values that you can read up. I mean, whatever it is, integrity and this and that and quality and whatever else. But then it's really how you behave when there's a trade-off that defines your culture, and you can't scale that. I mean, the only way you're going to scale that kind of decision making is through imbibing that culture, right?
I think a friend of mine had a nice way to put this. The way he said it was, I think that culture is things that, like, basically, culture is things that you don't have to point out to people.
Exactly.
Things are like decisions are taken on their own by your team without you having to sort of impose a punishment or an incentive for it. Like,
Right.
so when you are in that kind of a situation, when a team member has to take a call where he can go either way, and he chooses the right way automatically, right? He or she chooses the right way automatically. That is essentially what your culture is.
Right. And I mean, culture also depends on the second rung of people who join your startup, right? I mean, the operators, so to speak, right? Or rather, the first rung of people who kind of report to founders and so on. Uh,
Yeah.
what did you guys do at UpGrad that kind of set yourselves on this fast growth path? I mean, was there any conscious decisions on, that these are like things we should do, these are things we should avoid, and so on?
So UpGrad definitely did one thing very well, is they hired a lot of ex-founders, including me. So there were, I think, at least 5 or 6 other people like me who had started a company, or either were a part of a core team of another founding company. Part of a founding team of another company. So they had seen one cycle of failure, or they had seen how what mistakes can be made, and they understood what they're signing up for. They're signing up for uncertainty. They're signing up for some level of experimentation. And once you see some concrete direction, after that they're signing up for rapid scale. So that definitely helped a lot at UpGrad, figuring out how to hire other founders. And this was back in 2016-17. It was a good time also to be hiring founders, because the 15 was a very, very hot year in the Indian startup
Right,
ecosystem. Bunch of
exactly.
people raised a lot of money, and end of 15 or beginning of 16, that bubble burst. So there were a lot of founders who had run one company which didn't work out, and they were in the market looking for the next gigs. So UpGrad, especially, and in Bombay, there were not that many tech companies. Even today, there are not that many, but that back then they were even lesser. So UpGrad could essentially scoop up a lot of these people from the Powai startups ecosystem.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, let's move on to First Check. I think we first met when you were just about starting First Check,
Yeah.
and I think I see you hustling harder now than ever before, right? And it's pretty counter to it. It runs counter to what people think investors do, right? Which is sit on a couch, reply to emails, and then listen to pitches all day. So, what is the inspiration of First Check, and how has the experience been thus far?
So I don't. I sort of stumbled into First Check. It wasn't a conscious plan. Like some one of the funds in Bombay wanted to have a program like First Check. They didn't want to do it on their own under their under their brand name, and they felt like it should be like an open source initiative. It should be run by an ex-founder, and it should be built to sort of support founders at the early stages. And only a founder who has gone through that couple of years will sort of empathize with that. So I knew them, they knew me, and somehow things clicked and they helped me. helped me set it up. That fund is India Quotient in Bombay.
Right.
But now we operate independently. Like, we have our own operating setup. We decide independently. First Cheque is its own fund, so IQ is sort of a anchor LP for us, but we operate completely independently. So I sort of stumbled into it. But it was, it was definitely very, very, very. Last 1 year has been super exciting. We have done around 35 investments now.
Wow.
So till just before COVID, we were doing 3 to 4 deals a month. The thesis for First Check was that great founders are great at picking other great founders, and this pattern has been repeated for many years in the Valley and now in India as well. So if you take Flipkart, one of the Jungly.com founders was an investor. In Ola.com, in Ola Cabs, Kunal Bell from Snapdeal was an investor. Girish from Freshworks has been an investor in many multiple SaaS companies that are doing really well. So across valleys, across geographies, across sectors, you see that some of the best startups typically have other founders who are investors on day one, right? And we believe that these guys are great at picking early stage companies for two reasons. One is that they either invest in people they know. So if it's a ex-employee who's starting something, or a batchmate from college, or somebody they have worked with in some capacity, so it's in most of these cases it's a person bet, where they know that this person is a rock star, and no matter what they start, I should have some money in what they're doing.
Right.
That is a big edge to have on day one. And the other edge they have is that they understand markets very well. So for example, if you take somebody like Apramaya, for example, is a venture partner with First Check. So he's run taxi for sure, exited it to Ola. He understands mobility through and through, right? He understands what pain points are, how these markets evolve, what the user behaviors are, and so on. So he'll likely see a trend before mainstream VCs or investors would see them.
Right.
Or if you take, for example, Vidit, who runs Meesho, right? He's at the leading edge of social commerce, so he knows exactly what's happening in that market. Or if you take Farooq, who ran Find and sold it to which got acquired by Reliance. So these guys understand markets very, very well, and we believe so. These are the two edges they have on day one, which other angel investors or other regular investors don't have. These guys have a great network of people, and they know whom to pick. When people are so anybody in the network who starts up typically goes to them. So they have good deal flow to start with. Then to sort through that deal flow, they know the people that they're investing in, and they know the market that they're investing in, and quite often it's a combination of both. So because of this, we feel that they have a very big edge when they pick early stage companies. So First Check as a fund was designed to just back these founders. So wherever they invest, we will co-invest with them. So it's a pretty cool concept. In the Valley, this is called a scout fund, but we have sort of morphed the model into something else. So in the Valley, for example, each large fund has its own scout program. But here, what we have done is we have not sort of tied ourselves to one fund. We have multiple LPs, and First Check is on like an open source program. We tie up with some of the best founders in this country who have built and sold companies, and we just co-invest with them. So it was quite like, because this concept didn't exist in India, I had to sort of come up with ways to explain it to people, convince these founder angels on what is in it for them, for us to be investing with them, then build deal flow, work with these guys to make sure that we invest with them wherever they're investing, build up a brand name. So yes, it was essentially like starting a company only. Sure. But when I got into it, I didn't realize that is what I'm signing up for. But that is what it was.
Right.
And now we've got around 17 plus founder angels. We call them our venture partners. Some of them are really, all of them are really stellar names. Like you can check them out on their website. The VP product management at Freshworks, the CPO at Byju's, the founder of Metal, Ketan, founder of OQs, Harpreet. So there's a stellar group of people from different sectors, like edtech, fintech, e-commerce, payments, you name it. Like, we have people from all different backgrounds. So if a entrepreneur comes pitches to us, we typically know one founder who has built and exited or has operated a company in that space, and that person is like one of the best person to judge that startup idea.
Right.
So that's how we operate.
Right. So that's a pretty significant advantage, right? I mean, knowing whom to pick, and also understanding markets intrinsically. What are some of the adaptations that founders or operators have to go through to become investors? So to be able to sit on the other side of the table, what are those, like, I won't call it skill gaps, more like what are those intrinsics that you have to sort of adapt?
So actually, there are skill gaps. Like, a lot of founders, typically when people start doing angel investments, right, they make a lot of people make mistakes. So the skill set you need to be a founder is not the exact same skill set you need to be an investor. There is an overlap for sure, but investing mindset is very different. So as I said, risks is the lens you need to look at through when you're an investor. So as a founder, angels typically, I think a lot of them get swayed by the personality of the founder that they're dealing with, right? But oftentimes the destiny of a startup is decided by the market they're in, not by the how strong the, like, oftentimes even if you're a stellar founder, right, like that is actually one lesson I learned at my startup at Nayi Disha, that if you're in a bad market, like no matter what you do, you will not be able to build a large company. So it is a little different and it takes time to adapt to that, but then a good founder typically understands this fast and then starts pivoting fast, and then reaches a market which is large enough. So sometimes that does end up working. Like some of the largest Silicon Valley companies like Twitch or Twitter, all of these companies were not started as what they are today, right? They were doing something completely else, and then the founder realized that this doesn't work. Oh, but then this does work, so let me try doing this and build this other side project that we were doing into a large company. Yeah. So to your question on what is the skill set that founders need to evolve, one is basically to so one is valuation, figuring out at what price to sort of enter a company, at what stage, depending on the traction they have. That is a skill set a lot of founders don't have. Two, I would say, is to figure out how to sort of structure that, or sort of how to advise that company to reach an institutional fundraise, like what steps they need to take, who are the best investors in the ecosystem who should participate. So typically founders have worked with their own investors, right? They would have had 3, 4, 5 funds who have backed them in their journey. But the universe of VCs out there is much larger. So to match their portfolio to the right investor is another skill set. So VCs typically do this. VCs, full-time investors, will go out of their way and meet every other VC in town so that they know who's doing what, who invests at what stage, what type of companies which other fund like, so that when their portfolio start maturing, they can make those connects. But if you're not a full-time investor, you don't have the time to do that, right? So that is also one more sort of gap which founders have to overcome. And three, I think in some ways, founders need to founders, when they're investing outside of their own markets, right? Like for example, you may be a founder who's started to run a SaaS company, but then you get a pitch from somebody who's doing a consumer internet startup. So the metrics and the lens you have to view that company are very different from your own company, and that
I mean, it's chalk
exactly.
and cheese.
So that sometimes takes time to adapt to understand how the dynamics work differently in that domain than yours. So yeah, but they still do have a huge edge, because I think just knowing the person, right? Because on day one, what do we judge a team on, right? There's typically two people with a laptop with and a presentation, and they might have built something. They may be in the process of building something. There's not much else to go by except the quality of the people. So that is where they win. They typically know the people that they're backing, and that is a huge edge to have.
Right. You must be talking to a lot of startups right now, right? I mean, tens, if not hundreds of startups. What are the most common mistakes that you notice at a very, very early stage?
So I have two pet peeves with the founder community, and I also made these mistakes. So I do my best to sort of educate founders as to why they are mistakes. So number one thing is that most people have a hammer and they're looking for a nail. So they know something, like they know, like for example, if you take my startup, right, Nayi Disha, so we used to make Kinect-based games for kindergarten schools, right? So now when I look back to 2012, Kushal, who was just outside of college and who started this company, why did schools need Kinect-based games? The answer is they did not. They needed, I mean, you didn't specifically need a Kinect in a school, right? But because we knew how to make Kinect-based games, we made Kinect-based games and we try to sell them to schools. So that is what most founders do. Like, because they are in a domain, or because they know how to build something, they build it and then they expect that will be a large company. But that's not how the universe works. They need to think backward, thinking, does somebody need what I'm building? And then invest time in actually building it. Actually, even before that, does someone need what I'm building? And question number two is, are there enough people like those? It may be possible that you and your friends need something, but that doesn't mean that there are another 10 million people who have the same problem. So figuring out the size of the market you are going after, and genuinely, honestly answering that question, that does somebody need what I'm building, at early stage, these are the two biggest things that people mess up. Yeah, and the third thing I think is people confuse funding with success. So they figure out that, okay, if I can just raise a 500K or $1 million round, then I'm set, and then I'll build this. But that doesn't really solve much of your, doesn't solve nothing, because finally you have to deploy that money somewhere, right? And you need an original insight about the market to be able to successfully deploy that money,
right?
And that you won't get till you have spent enough time in the market. So founders tend to sort of prioritize the fundraise over the actual progress of the company. Again, I made the same mistake in my life, so I have no shame admitting it.
Right.
And the fourth thing I would say is that a lot of founders are running great businesses, but they don't understand that they're not running a VC fundable business. So, again, my own startup, Nai Disha, was selling to schools, right? Now, schools in India take forever to decide whether they want to buy something or not. That market is hyper competitive.
It's a bitch of a market.
Yeah, people don't pay you on time. They're typically run by builders or politicians. So not the best people to be selling to. They will. We had cases where we had contracts signed and the school would just call us and say, give us a 25% discount or we will not pay. So after 2 years of paying, suddenly they'll call you and say reduce prices. Or a bunch of, or just getting money out of them on time is a huge problem. So that market now, no matter how much ever money you pump into it, that reality is not going to change. Or there are other sectors where services companies, people are businesses which don't have any operating leverage with tech, right? Founders don't realize that they are in a space which is never going to be VC funded, and that is very sad because every business doesn't need to raise VC capital, right? You can be a very happy and very successful founder running 100 crore company with making a couple of crores for you and your co-founders every year, and you can live a very, very comfortable, not even comfortable, luxurious life is what you can lead with that kind of money in India, right? But if you run after VC money, then you will never get there, and VC will never, neither will they fund you, nor will you progress with your own. It's a big distraction, right? Trying to go after a VC fundraise. So this, I think, is one of the biggest thing. People need to realize, honestly answer the question: can my business at some point make $100 million in revenue? If it can't, then this is not a VC business. I should look for other sources of capital like a loan or an HNI or something else. But a VC will, even if they give me the money, then it's going to be a disaster because I will never be able to grow at the scale they expect me to, and it's just be a mismatch of expectations. So point four is to basically understand whether or not you are in a VC business. That is crucial.
Yeah. Most first-time founders severely underestimate, how much time, how much effort it's going to take to, get any modicum of success, I feel, right? So,
that's true. So there is that curve. I think somebody, I forgot what it's called, but there's that curve of disappointment. I think what they call it.
When you flow, right? Basically.
Yeah, and then you realize that okay, this is not as quick as because somehow the media always picks up stories where people make billions, like the Instagram guy started a company and within a year they sold it to Facebook and for 1 billion, and YouTube got sold for 1 billion, and so people tend to glamorize these things and they don't understand that this could be that guy's fourth startup. So if you take Travis, for example, right, the Uber founder, he's one of my favorite founders. Uber is his third startup. He was at it for I think 10 or 12 years when he started Uber. He had been living in his mom's basement for 10 years after college. In the US, that's like an insult to tell someone that you're still staying with your parents. He was doing that for 10 years after campus. He was still staying with his parents, and Uber was his third company. So it takes a long time. It's not even about the current company. Most likely your current company will not work out, but you need to try again and keep looking for the one that does. So yes, 100% agree that people underestimate how long it takes to sort of actually hit success.
Another fact about Travis is that I think before Uber, he was part of the startup that did P2P file sharing or something of that sort, and he had all of these lawsuits with all these Hollywood types to battle as well. So he's not he's not shy of that, right? So he's got that background as well. So one of the things that startups have to do is attract the best of the best people with whatever little resources that they have, right? With a very limited brand and so on, right? So these operators who kind of join startups at very early stages and own functions or whatever make or break a startup in many ways, right? So what can a founder do to kind of attract these people?
I think two things. One is when you're starting a company, right? Typically, it's going to be you and your co-founder, or maybe you don't even have a co-founder. So you should make a list of people in your immediate circle that you know and you really respect. Like somebody who, if they open their mouth, you will shut up and listen to them. And somebody whom you know who has both three things: integrity, intelligence, and capacity to do hard work. Okay, you should make a list of all the people in your circle who have these three qualities, and whom doesn't matter if they're from the domain or not. Like that is irrelevant. And then you go talk to them and tell them what you're doing, right? Tell them why you think what you're doing is a big idea and why it's going to change the world. um, and they may agree to join you, they may not, but if they don't, then you should ask them to name their list. Ask them who are the people in your circle whom you think I should go talk to, and you'll be surprised. They'll tell you, okay, here are four more names. That there's this guy I was staying with in Kota, or there's this other guy I went to college with, and they'll give you 3-4 names, and then you go to them, and then again you do the same thing again, try and sell them. If they don't come on board, ask them for their list of people, and so you just keep doing that, and eventually you'll find someone. uh, that is one, and this is a non-stop thing. Like this doesn't end. It's not like you do this for the first 6 months and you like this is what you do for the forever. Like the first 5 years. In fact, I remember that one reading somewhere that the Zomato founders were talking to every single employee that was hired till the 500th employee or something like that. So if you care about the type of team you're building, and I mean, at the end of the day, the team is what the company is. So you have to do this. You have to have a very high bar. Um, the other thing which I think Indian founders don't do at all, or do very, very less of, is to communicate their vision online, build a brand personally, write blogs, do videos, do podcasts, shout from rooftops about what you're doing. So if you see what Austin is doing with Lambda School, for example, right? He's a magnet. Like he does zero marketing. Right? He just tweets all the time. All the time he keeps tweeting about what he's doing, successes, failures, what are they learning. So all the time he's just communicating what's happening in the company, and that will automatically attract insane inbound interest. Right? I'm sure everybody who was interested in tech probably mailed Austin saying, "Hey, I'm super excited about what you're doing. I would love to grab a coffee."
I think one of the Collison brothers left Stripe to join him, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Exactly. So that's how big of a win that is, right? So even in India, I think this has happened with that Pesto founder recruiting one of Swiggy's co-founders to come on board.
Yeah, exactly.
Really cool.
Yeah.
That's an amazing. Yeah. So people, founders need to set aside time to sort of invest in this long term. Like keep writing blogs, keep sharing, keep appearing on interviews, podcasts, keep sharing what you're doing. Why do you think you're building something that's going to change the world? Unless you shout from rooftops, nobody's going to suddenly wake up and realize that this is the company I wanted to join. Even for us at Nai Disha, one of the best hires, actually all the best hires we made were inbound. There were people who mailed us saying that I like what you're doing, I read your blog, or I saw your interview on this channel, or I saw you guys there at this event, and I would really like to have a chat.
Those are the best.
So inbound guys, because they've filtered themselves out for interest, right? You know that he cares. Like otherwise he wouldn't make the trip to come and see you and interview on his own. So, but that inbound has to be generated. Like it doesn't just come one day. Like you have to invest time to sort of create that inbound.
Absolutely. So Kushal, let's move to what we call like a rapid fire round. Okay, I mean this is not going to be anything scandalous. Don't worry about it. So just quick answers to all of these following questions. So if you were to pick one role, right? Founder, operator, or investor, which one?
Investor.
Why?
So I personally I feel I am a very I'm too curious for my own good. Like I keep reading about things with nothing to do with my daily life. I like meeting a lot of people. I like understanding their lives. And all of these sort of traits align perfectly with being an investor. Awesome. As a founder, you need to have those blinders on and just do what you're doing for years and years and years, right? Like so that quality is which is focus essentially. Just do one thing for 10 years and do it the best in the world, right? So that is something I don't think I have in me. I keep getting distracted. I keep going and meeting other people, finding out what they are doing. So in terms of skill sets, investing is what sort of aligns very well with me.
Awesome. The best founder around in your opinion?
So I'm a big fan of Swiggy. So Harsha is what I would name. Like I feel Swiggy has executed like relentlessly. I must have had like 200 orders in like last year, and not one order was late. It is insane. Like
crazy.
So I'm a big fan of Swiggy.
Yeah. The best investor in your opinion?
So I'm a big fan of Bill Gurley from Benchmark. I think the all-time greatest of all time VCs. If you read that book, there's a book called which covers Airbnb and Uber. So Uber, his investment in Uber was not an accident. It's not that he was sitting in his office and one day Travis came and pitched him. He knew that there is going to be a company which is going to be a marketplace for transportation, and he had met every single startup doing that. And he had been watching out for that company for 3 years or 2 years before Uber actually came about. So, and he had done multiple marketplaces before, and he had identified, okay, there is a market where a marketplace would really kick off a huge business, and this company will be built. So I mean, Benchmark of course has a slew of hits, but just the Uber investment was a monster return on their investment. So to anticipate that this is how this market is going to evolve, and then to find the founder who's going to actually build the company that dominates that market is amazing.
That's truly fantastic.
Bill Gurley for me is for sure my investor in
Indian investor?
In India, tough to pick. So I owe a lot of what I'm doing at First Cheque to Anand and Madhukar from India Quotient. I think I respect them a lot for seeing trends before they become mainstream. So they backed lending companies before they became mainstream. Lending Cart was their company. They backed vernacular Indian companies before they became mainstream. ShareChat was their company. So I really respect what they've done with India Quotient. They've taken contrarian bets, and a lot of that has
Awesome.
played out.
One
Apart from that, if I can name one more, I think Axel is also killed it. I mean, Axel speaks with Axel. I think 10 unicorns or something like that in their portfolio. So they're absolutely with Flipkart, Swiggy, Freshworks, and the way they have dominated the SaaS category, right? Like any SaaS founder who starts up automatically thinks that I should raise from Shekhar Kirani at Axel. So kudos to Axel as well.
One Series B company that you wish you had invested in?
Series B, Razorpay. I really like Razorpay. I love the product. I love the execution of the founders. Razorpay is one company I would definitely.
Okay. Most underrated sector in India right now, investing wise?
I think EdTech is still underrated. Like despite Unacademy and Byju's, breaking out, the depth of that market is so huge. It's just so big, and the demand for it is just so high that I think Gaurav Munjal said that in one of his interviews that India's largest internet startup will not be e-commerce; it will be education company. I think I agree with him. The breadth and depth of that sector is just immense. So EdTech is, I think, still. I mean, till Byju's broke out, people are not even investing in EdTech. So I think just the party has just started.
I agree with you. Yeah, especially I mean after this post-COVID phase, right? I mean, it's going to be a heck of a thing actually. So if you could go all in on one company right now, which one would it be?
I think I would go with Swiggy, man. I am a big fan of Swiggy. They're just relentless execution, and now with COVID, the demand for groceries and basically having one app that just gets stuff to you wherever you are, that is going to go through the roof. So I would
just on the topic of Swiggy, right? So, I mean, so much of the convenience we take for granted right now. I mean, the resolution on their service issues, right? It's just so fantastic. I mean, it's just three taps and you're done, man. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, I see people in the US complaining on Twitter about, I ordered food and it came after 2 hours, and then I had to, call a guy to return the food. And I'm like, dude, like that's something we should do in 2015. That's crazy. Like Swiggy is like, in 3 taps, I can cancel my order. In 3 taps, I can probably change the dish that I have. 3 or 4 taps, I can change the dish I've ordered. I don't have to speak to any human being. So it's amazing the way customer care, they have absolutely nailed it. The delivery experience, even the way older people use it, for me is always a good sign of how good the user experience is, right? Like my dad, for example, still gets very confused with Zomato. Like he will actually call me and said, "Can you find this restaurant that app? I cannot find it." Swiggy may has not happened. He will be able to use it automatically. So this I have seen with multiple, not just my dad. Multiple people I've seen. Swiggy is just way more easier to use, and it just works. So kudos to them.
Yeah. So most underrated founder skill that you think?
I think this just the first thing. Like most startups, I think whether you're going to be a $10 billion company or not, it's probably like even if whether you have a chance of being one or not is decided in the first 6 months of your company. So understanding which market is that deep that you can build that large a company, right? That skill set, I think very few founders have, where they genuinely understand, is this going to be a VC business? Is it going to be that large a company? Can I build that larger company in 6 to 7 years, 8 years time frame? That just evaluating markets, understanding which are the markets I need to go after. That skill set very few people have, because people typically come from their own domains, right? Like somebody has worked in e-commerce all his life, he sees e-commerce as a next startup. Somebody has an ed tech, they do ed tech. Somebody has seen SaaS, they do SaaS. Very few founders come out of one startup or do something for 5 years and then decide, hey, I think that market is going to be huge, let me just go after that and build something there.
Yeah, because I think founders are essentially problem solvers, and if you give them a problem, they'll be like happy to like go all in and solve that problem. But
Yeah,
really having that perspective to
exactly.
decide which problem to solve, right? That
Exactly.
that is a
Exactly.
super skill.
And that's actually, it's kind of tragic because a lot of people I see are amazing amazing people with great skill sets, but they're just in the wrong market, or they're just solving the wrong problem, and nobody can help them. No matter how much money you give them, that problem will remain a small problem. So yeah, evaluating markets, I think, is the most underrated
Okay,
skill set.
most underrated investor skill.
I think being nice. People don't. I think I don't know if it's underrated. At least I think in India maybe sort of is, but in the US it's caught up now. But just be nice to people. Like understand that the founder, whatever he or she is doing, right? I mean, for most of them it is their first try, and if it's going to be a Travis, he better remember you when he starts Uber, right? So he should come back to you like 6 years later when he starts Uber. He should remember that, okay, this was the guy who, even though he didn't invest, he actually helped me out. He responded to me. He actually gave me honest feedback on why he's not investing. Um, so yeah, being nice and being honest with founders is, I think, very very underrated. The way I think most one problem with India, I think, is that, and to some extent I am also guilty of it, is we are not very good at telling people no. So we either avoid it or we give them a diplomatic answer. But you should do the founder a favor and tell them honestly why you're not investing, why you think it's a small market, or why do you think it'll never be a large market, or if you think the team is not good enough. You should tell them that so that they can go do something else and save themselves a couple of years.
Like this guy Kevin O'Leary does on Shark Tank, basically. Maybe too harsh.
Kevin maybe is a little too direct. Yeah, but I always feel that. So I remember, for example, when I was running Nayi Disha, right? One of the best meetings I had was with Anand, Daniel at Axel. I pitched him, I explained everything, and then he just sat me down and he explained the math to me that, look, this is where you are, this is your average selling price. To reach 100 million, this is how much you'll have to sell. Here's how many people are there who can buy this. So these numbers don't add up. So no matter what you do, they nahi hone wale, right? So that I was eye opening for me that yes, he's right. Like I can't argue with him after that. So just do that math, tell people why you're saying no, so that they can either go do something else or they can choose to do a small business in that category. So at least they know that, okay, they don't have to continue wasting their time with VCs.
That's certainly valuable. What is the best quarantine hack that you've discovered?
Quarantine hack, I think keeping my camera off. I don't know. So I started getting up a little earlier to sort of get some time to do the housework, get ready to start the day before. Otherwise, actually honestly I'm still in the middle of processing this, so I don't know if I have a good hack. Like it's been 2-3 months. I'm not used to doing all the housework on my own, so yeah, I don't have a good answer to this.
Right. And what is the book that you're reading right now?
Right now, I was reading this book by Scott Adams. Actually, honestly, I haven't read it for 2 weeks, but till 2 weeks back, I was reading the latest Scott Adams book. I like his books a lot. Can't remember the name right now.
Yeah, he makes a lot of sense, man.
So I liked his last book a lot. How I failed at everything and still win one big, right? So
Loser Think, I think. Yeah, correct.
Loser Think is a new one. Loser Think is the one. Yeah. Loser Think is the one.
I heard about it in that Shane Parrish podcast that I heard. So, yeah, on that note, what is a podcast that you listen to and that you recommend?
So I listen to Invest Like the Best by Patrick O'Shaughnessy. Then Shane Parrish podcast. Then I liked your Bharat Varta podcast you did with Harsh and Sridhar.
20 VC?
I listened to a couple of more. 20 VC, somehow not that much. I don't know why. I somehow never caught along with 20 VC. How I Built This, I like a lot by Guy Raz. Then my podcasting has sort of gone down over the past 1 or 2 years. I used to listen to podcasts when I was driving. Then whenever I should drive, I used to listen to podcasts. But a year or two back, I decided enough driving. I don't have time to drive. So since then, it has gone down significantly. But now in the lockdown with dishwashing, it has come back up. So,
So all right, we're almost at the end of the podcast. What do you have coming up, and what are some of the words of advice that you can share with all of the startup folks who are listening to this?
Just pick a good problem to solve that, and I would say spend enough time validating just these two things, that do people really have a problem that I'm trying to solve, and two, are there enough of those people in the world who have that problem? Just these two questions, if you can answer to yourself honestly and clearly articulate these two things, that do that before you write a single line of code. No matter if it takes you 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, don't fret about that, but just be sure about this before you start the company.
Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, Kushal. It was great having you. Thank you for sharing all those wonderful insights, and wish you a fantastic deal flow for the rest of the year and the years forward.
Thanks. My pleasure being here. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Startup Operator. We'll interview operators at fast-growing startups and curate insights that can help you do better. This podcast is available on all popular platforms. If you like our content, don't forget to subscribe and share. Thank you. Until next time, put your head down and execute.